Well, good morning everyone. Welcome back to Outpost Review. Yeah, we've got snow still trying to hang on. I don't know if you can see to the what would be your left of the sun there. Right up top there's that big pine I was talking about. My neighbor's wanting to, that's actually on the line to saw up for his decking, and since he's done so much for us and our channel, I told him when he gets a chance we'll come up here, or for him to come up here, and we'll fall the tree and throw it on the sawmill and saw up some decking boards. There'll probably be more than what he needs, but anyway, yep, it's a beautiful, beautiful morning out here. I think it was 20 degrees when I woke up today, which is highly unusual for us. Generally we don't get this until January and February, but every once in a while, especially when you have a lot of storms in the Gulf and things like that, it pushes weather inland. We had a lot of rain the other day, and since it turned off cold, it just turned into snow. So kind of a nice change to have. Anyway, let's walk down here to the sawmill because I've got a few things that I want to talk to you about. Since this is an informative type of channel, and we wanted to do tool reviews and just give you behind the scenes footage and information here at the Outpost, I thought that I would kind of talk about the sawmill today. This is the Norwood Lm29. They do make one a size smaller. They also make one a size bigger, which is the HD36, I think it is. This one will cut up to a 30-inch log. Of course, you kind of have to whittle it down because you can only go down so deep right here, but you can mill a 30-inch log with this. You know, when I started thinking about building again and so forth, the other home that I had built, I hired a guy that had a sawmill to come over. He set up down in the field below the house seat where I was going to build, and this same hollow that I have been pulling logs out of to build all of this up here is the same hollow that I milled the logs from to build that house. Now, it was 3,000 square feet. I milled up all the floor joists, upper and lower. It actually had 2 bedrooms on each end, and it was designed to have a catwalk between the 2 of them up overhead, but I went ahead and put a loft in there, and then I changed the direction or the position of the staircase coming down into the living room. And I actually had to use 2x12s to span across the kitchen dining area in order to build that loft. I did all the floor joists for the upstairs, the downstairs. I did all the sheeting because I used 1x10s on the outside. I used all lumber that came out of that hollow for the sheeting on the outside, and all of the rafters for the roof. So I saved a ton of money. The walls, interior and exterior, were factory 2x4s, factory lumber. But I saved a lot of money cutting the bulk of the house out in rough cut sawmill lumber. He actually had a wood miser that he was on axle and wheels. He pulled it in down there, and it actually had a hydraulic lift on the side, which I can purchase for this, but I didn't think that I needed it, especially when I have the tractor. Anyway, I would pull the logs in about a half a dozen a day after work. When I would come in, I would take the tractor, go up in the hollow and drag them over there, and then he would roll them up on the sawmill that day, saw them up. I left my trailer down there. He would offload onto the trailer, and then when I came in, I would bring the tractor down, hook up to the trailer, and pull it up to the house seat, and I would stack all 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x10s, 1x's, everything around the house seat, so that when I started building, all I had to do was reach and grab and put the house together. My point was, when I thought about building up here, you know, these are getting hard to find anymore. People are buying store-bought lumber, so, well, around this area anyway. So I started looking online to and doing some research on sawmills, and I wanted the Wood Miser, but it was quite a bit higher. When I looked at Norwood, they had such good reviews, and then I checked in. I found a video where it's a family-operated company there in Canada, and I just began to, I guess, fall in line with everybody with the reviews and the people that had purchased them and really liked them. So we went ahead and purchased it. I think if I remember correctly, I gave $6,300 and some odd dollars for this sawmill. Now I did add a 4-foot bunk on the end that gave me the ability to cut 16 feet. Originally I could only cut 12 feet because that's how it came. But you can actually purchase 4-foot sections and extend it out however long you want to. You could have it go out 50 feet if you needed it. So all I did was I dug some holes in the ground, poured some concrete, doubled up some 2x10s, which if I could have got a hold of some railroad ties or something like that, you know, I would have used those. But doubled up some 2x10s and set the bunks on top of that, and have been milling lumber ever since. So as far as money goes and the efficiency and the cut that it gives you, I can say that this has been well worth the money. It has saved me so much money, especially if you've looked at lumber prices today. They're outrageous. So I've had a lot of comments about either hanging a bucket, hanging a sack, or doing something where the sawdust comes out here. Now I do have to say that I kind of manufactured this thing right here, which is just some simple thin tin, metal, aluminum, I guess, aluminum. I kind of fixed it up because this is the original guard, and it just had some holes right here where the sawdust would come out. But it would blow out about 6 or 8 feet, and it was just kind of going everywhere. So what I did was I took some of that metal and I cut it off, and then I made a corner plate right here, put some little bitty screws in it where it actually blows the material straight down. I get a little residual everywhere coming off the blade, filling up the bunks, but you know, has part of being the sawmill. But the bulk of it does come out right here, comes out in a pile, and all I have to do is scoop it up and carry it away. Now I am piling it up down there in the woods. I'm going to create a compost pile out of that, so in about a year it should be ready to use. And then a lot of the landscaping, once I get the cabin built up here, that will be good use for it as well. But yeah, I found that this works a whole lot better as opposed to how they had actually engineered it. And even other sawmills, this would be a good addition to put on there. I can't hang the bucket or the bag or anything down here because it would drag. You see how low I can mill down to 1 inch on the bunks. Now if my sawmill was set up higher, yes, I might be able to put a small bucket on here, but still it fills up so quick, or it would fill up so quick that it was just, you know, probably not worth the effort. I can mill 3 or 4 logs and have a pile about 1 foot high. Of course it's triangle, right? And then I just scoop it up and carry it down there, so it's not a problem. This addition right here has kept me from sawdust blowing in and out and getting all over the place. Now this is a 16 horse Vanguard engine, double overhead valve, twin cylinder, and it has plenty enough power to cut the logs that I'm putting on here. And it actually cuts very fast, but what I try to do is go slower, get a better cut, and not dog the engine down, which also puts a lot of pressure on the blade when you're trying to push through there. But But this engine right here has an electric start. You can either get that with that. It's also got the manual down there, but I got it with the electric start. And all I have to do is right here is just choke it just a little bit, get it cranked up, let it warm up, and we're good to go. But it's a very good engine. I've been using it probably going on this next June, I think will be the 3rd year. And it has never failed, and it's doing a great job. You have to keep it maintained, but yeah, this is a very good engine, so I could highly recommend the Briggs & Stratton. The other option was the Honda or the Kohler engine, but I chose this one right here because of being the twin overhead valve and the 16 horse. The one on the large sawmill that they make, I think it's 23 horse, but you know, this one has been sufficient for what I have been doing up here. And you've seen me, if you've been watching the channel at any length of time, you've seen me cutting some good sized logs. I have come out with some cants that were I think 15-inch square, so that was a lot of material that I had to cut out in order to whittle down to get a cant, which is the square portion of the log once you get rid of the slab wood on the outside. When you start milling it down, you know, I've been able to do a lot of work with this sawmill right here with that engine. Alright, I took the guards off the front here. This is the pulley system inside right here. This is how it turns. And the blade always faces the direction, or the teeth that face the direction that it turns. So this is the way that it turns when it's cutting. You have 2 Alamites right here on each wheel that you need to keep greased. Generally what I will do is when I come up here to start to cut, I will stick the grease gun on there and just a couple of 2 or 3 pumps, and I can see the grease actually coming out. And then something else that I do that I probably picked up from my grandfather, but I will take the oil can also and I will squirt every moving part just so that I know that it's running freely. Now, I don't know whether I need to do that or not need to do that, but that's something that I've always done. So far I've not had any issues with this. Other than the place where I've been getting my blades. Sometimes they make the blades too small because they just take a tape measure, go around and measure it. So from now on, instead of getting them locally, because actually they can't sharpen them anymore, their sharpener broke and they said they weren't going to fix it. So all the blades that I'm using, that when I get done with them, they're just stacking up out there because there's no place here for me to sharpen them. So I'll probably have to find a place where I can ship them off and have them sharpened if I do that. But it's not too expensive. 10 blades run around $130, $140, and of course they're not carbide tipped, they're just metal. But I can probably cut 4 good sized trees with 1 blade. So if I was actually milling all day long non-stop, I would probably go through 2 blades, depending on how many trees I actually cut up. And actually how big they were, because then you've got more material. But anyway, I thought I would show you the inside right here. You do get some sawdust that accumulates right here, but like I said, that's just part of the blade going around, sawdust collecting that doesn't come out the chute, and that fills up the bins. I think I've emptied these bins twice, maybe 3 times, pretty much about once a year. And then it's, you know, it's only about so deep in there because the bunks are probably 14 to 16 inches deep. But anyway, I mean, this has saved me a lot of money throughout the last couple of years with everything that I have done up here. Just those posts 7 by 7 that I have cut would cost an enormous amount of money, and then the beams on the bottom were 7 inches wide, 10 inches deep. That would be a lot of money too, not just to mention the rafters and the kitchen that I built up there, and the compost toilet, and this to start it out, just going to be a temporary shelter because I was going to move the sawmill later. So I didn't put a whole lot of work into this, but we'll just have to see later whether I move it or not. But anyway, this is pretty simple on the inside. Here's the drive right here. Pulley system to keep the belt, keep tension on it. So that's what the inside looks like. Now y'all have probably seen me pumping on this thing when I put a log on. I didn't know anything about milling logs when I started, and I still don't know a whole lot, know enough to get by. But what I did was, you know, when watching YouTube and other people sawing lumber, a lot of the sawmills have an electric or a hydraulic lift right here that will actually raise the log up or lower it. Because when I was doing some of this research, I would see these guys put the log on the sawmill and then they would adjust it to make it level. They say that you, when you make your pass through there, that you actually lose less lumber. When I first started, I would put the log up here on the sawmill, and of course you know how a tree is tapered from the bottom to the top, and I would go through there and it would make a level cut, and I would end up with a piece of slab wood with a big wedge on one end tapering down, you know, as I went along. Then I would flip the log, do the same thing. So I came out with actually 4 fairly good sized wedges before I would get to a square cant. Well, when I was looking at it on YouTube, they would level it up and make a pass that you've probably seen me doing recently on the slab wood that I offload when I'm milling the lumber. They make more of a level cut, then they turn it and they do the same thing, so they only end up with 2 wedge cuts, which once you rotate it the second time, you've got a 90-degree angle because you've made 2 passes through there. And so when you rotate it again, you don't level it up, otherwise you would mess up your first cut. So because by the time you rotate it 3 times, that first cut actually ends up on the bottom. So it was kind of interesting, you know. Now I know other people may do it differently, where they level it up and then they just start making passes through there, and then they will put the lumber back on and then they will shave off the edges. That's another way to do it. Anyway, the way I'm doing it, it works good for me, and I'm saving that slab wood so that I can use it, you know, on my buildings, because after I built that compost toilet, kind of liked the way that it looked, and I thought, well, this is a way to use up a lot of that slab wood. The only thing I have to do is take the bark off of it and be able to come up with a structure that looks pretty cool. Anyway, or a design that looks pretty cool. So this hydraulic jack here, when I was working, they had several of these. I don't know where they got them from, but they were going to throw them away. I think there was 3 of them. And I said, hey, can I have one? And they said, well, sure. The others, other people had picked them up. So I brought it here, and when I laid the log on here, I kind of built a platform for it. What I will do is I will jack that's why I take the tape measure and measure each end. I will jack it up to where it's level, and then I will make my first pass. I will rotate it, measure it again, jack it up, make my second pass, and then I don't use it anymore. Every time I rotate it, I'm rotating at 90 degrees on the flat surface, and I'm off and running. So that's what this little simple jack is right here. Didn't cost me anything, and works out pretty good. Now this right here is what keeps the log in place. Once you get the log loaded up here, you scoot this up however high or low that you want it, and once you get it there, then you take this and you rotate it into the log, and it will put pressure on this bar and it kind of binds, and that's what holds the log in place. I've actually got one on this end, and then that extra portion that I purchased down there, I determined that I probably needed another one down there at the far end. So I think this whole assembly and everything was about $200, which is the extra plates right here, the bar, one of these, and this right here. Once you get your cant cut out, which is, like I say, that's your square portion, you can actually slide this up there, and when you push this down, it pushes this little thing right here forward, like this, pushes it forward, and it actually locks into that cant and binds on this again, and it holds that cant into place. So this is secondary right here. Is what you use on your cant. I mean, you could use this right here, but this thing right here will keep it down so low that when I come down to the top of these bunks, I'm actually cutting across the top of this, and that's within 1 inch of the very bottom of the cant. So if I wanted to cut down a little bit more, I can rotate it to the side and lock it in right here, but I don't really mill anything less than 1 inch. So that's what this is right here. This right here is what keeps the logs from rolling off the sawmill. So you can turn it around like this, and then you've got a little knob right here that you can tighten, and this keeps the log, like I say, from rolling off the mill. Now once you get your cant cut out, you can actually take this, lower it, turn it in this direction, and this little lip right here will catch the bottom of the cant and hold it to where it doesn't slide off. Let me see if I can demonstrate. So let's say that this is the bottom of your cant. You push it over right here like this, and it catches, and that holds it to keep it from going off the edge. And then you can just keep milling down within 1 inch and not be hitting that right there. So that's a feature that's really nice to have. Also, the bevel on it right here, when you're rotating the log, if it just went straight across, it may catch, but it's beveled so that the log can rotate a whole lot easier. When you have it turned this way and you have it up, when you're rolling the log, this makes a better surface area for the log to roll on. I also, if you noticed, I numbered that right there because that corresponds with, as I'm making my cuts, I will know that if I'm cutting a 6-inch log, if I have that right there at 6 inches, then I can make a pass through here making a 6-inch cant, if that's what I want to start at, and I won't be actually running into this. Now every once in a while you'll forget and have these up. You can see that little nick right there where I ruined the blade. But I had forgotten left it up and needed to move it down. I remember I was cutting 2x4s or something, but anyway, yeah, I just barely nicked that. But anyway, that's what that is for, and that's what those marks are for. So I think that this is really handy to have that on there. Alright, this is the back side of the sawmill. This is where the battery is held right here. This is the manual start in case you needed to use it. This right here is the water tank. In the wintertime you have to use RV and marine antifreeze. Basically, it's like antifreeze. You put it in the plumbing to keep the lines from freezing up. Now in the summertime I use just mainly water, but I will add some dish soap to it because it keeps it a little bit more permeable. Like if you have a puddle of water standing outside and you go pour some dish soap in it, it will cause the water to sink into the ground. So by doing that, it allows the blade to turn easier. It also helps to keep the blade clean, like on pine when they have a lot of sap, and it just makes the cutting go a whole lot smoother. So this is what I put in it in the wintertime, and just since we started getting a cold snap, this right here is a little bit frozen. So I'm not turning it on, I'm not using it or anything. I will wait till it warms up, and then I will take this and drain it, and I will start putting this in here because over the next few months I'm going to need to mill up those top and bottom plates, and I'll need to have this in here in order to do that. This right here actually tensions the blade, so that when I take the blade off I have to rotate this counterclockwise, and it actually loosens up I can take the blade off, put a new blade back on there, and then tighten it back up, and it pulls back the pulley back in this direction. So right here is how you tension the blade. The other tensioner goes to the pulley system. Then right here you have got a lumber production table, which primarily I use this blue mark right here on my inches. Now you can also, there's a red mark right here, and you can adjust this, okay, based on the height of your blade from the bunks, but I've got it pretty much set to where if I'm cutting 18 inches right here, it'll be 18 inches above my bunk. So I primarily just use that blue line right there for my cutting. Also, I had a guy send this to me, which is fantastic. I kind of knew this by cutting lumber, but I never did have a chart. I can't remember his name that sent this to me, but it's Cage Hill Sawyer. And then he's got his phone number up here, but he made this up and sent it to me watching the videos. But what he did was is he actually made a table and figured it out that if the diameter of your log is 10 inches, by the time you cut the slab wood off the 4 outside corners, you will have a cant that's 7.1 inches. And then respectively, if it's a 16-inch log from one side to the other in diameter, by the time you cut your slab wood off, you'll end up with 11.3 inches. And he's got this all the way up to a 32-inch log. So that was kind of handy to have, and I just keep it stuck right there so that when I get the log up here, I just measure across and I can kind of determine if the log is straight. Now a lot of these logs are, you know, they may have waves in them, which I want to come out a whole lot less by the time I cut all that wave out and everything. But it's pretty handy to have. If your logs are standard, that's pretty much what you're going to get. This right here is what I raise and lower this with. And I'm watching this blue mark right here on my gauge, and I can just raise it or I can lower it to wherever I want to cut. This, of course, is my handle. This is the feed. When I pull this up, it actually opens this line up, and the water actually flows out onto the blade. When I let it go, it puts pressure on that. It's kind of a little valve in there. It puts pressure on that, and it stops the flow of the water. So this was the automatic part of the automatic water feed too. But that's the back side. That's kind of how it operates. Here's a kill switch up here in case you need it. Well, here's the long view of the sawmill that you see quite often when I'm milling lumber. You know, another thing too is since I'm filming up here every day, what you see on video is pretty much my lifestyle, or a day in the life here at the Outpost. I don't just put out one video a week like a lot of other YouTubers, or one every 2 weeks. I pretty much am filming every day when I come up here. So you will see a lot of action on the sawmill, because if I'm doing a project and I need the lumber, well, I've got to cut it. So I hope that that doesn't get monotonous watching the milling, but you have to consider that I don't buy any of the lumber, I make it. So this is where I get it. I go to Milo's out there, which is the natural resources that I have. Another thing that you're going to need with a sawmill or logging, whether you're out in the woods or right here at the sawmill, is a cant hook. All right, that's what this is. Now, this point right here, when you put it on to the log and you start to pick up like this, it draws this in, it puts pressure, and it digs into the log, and then you can rotate it. A PV has a point on the end. Now this was originally a PV, but I didn't like the way that it operated, so what I did was I cut it off, we heated it up, and we split it. Right here you can see we split it, and we sharpened that right there, which allows me to dig into the log a little bit better. A PV, you know, the point, you can use it as a spike. You can do a lot of different things with a PV, but then the cant hook, and I don't know why they named it a cant hook. I guess it's because you can't turn it unless you got one of these. But they come in different patterns and forms and things like that. This is one that I actually picked up at Co-op, and it has a huge handle on it, but something that you're not going to break, okay, unless you're really, really strong. But a lot of them have a much smaller steel body on them that you can actually purchase. But I think that I gave, I don't remember, $60, $70, $80 for this. So this tool right here is a very valuable asset to have when you're out in the woods logging, or in here on the sawmill trying to bucket up into lumber that you're going to use. You're going to need one of these if you're doing any kind of this work. Now this is the way that the blades come when you purchase them. There is a way that you can actually fold these up into a circle. I haven't learned to fold them up. I can unfold them. You have to be quite careful when you get it started. I always put my foot on it because I don't want it to flip up. But they're very sharp. But like I say, they'll last through about 4 logs. But this is the way that they come when you purchase them. Something else that you might want to consider when you're cutting logs on the sawmill is the fact that when you drag a log out of the woods, the bark will catch dirt. If I was to drag it in the driveway here, it would catch gravel too. And that is the enemy to the sawmill blade. So what I generally try to do, I do have a pressure washer, which I can wash the log off, but I generally lift my logs up and carry them, which you have seen me do many times. But if you're dragging a log, what you need to do is you need to have some way to either strip the bark from the log before you saw it, or you need to have a way to clean the bark off, which a pressure washer would come in handy for that. But a lot of times, if I'm just dragging the end to get it to where I can lift it up or something and I see a little bit of dirt, I will take my hatchet, my axe or something sharp, and I will chip away that bark there so that when the blade passes through it, I'm not cutting into dirt, which will dull the teeth on the blade, or I'm not cutting into a rock. Now every once in a while I have run into a log that has had a nail put into it, probably in years past when they were putting up a fence or something like that. They may have used that tree to attach to. That the tree actually, you know, the fence is long gone, the tree actually grew up, and that nail was on the inside. So I have run into that from time to time, but that's not anything that you're going to be able to know. But you do need to clean the bark when you are using the sawmill to save the blade and get longer life out of the teeth. Did you notice the spelling on the sawmill? That was kind of a humorous, you know, around this area. It's a big tourist area, and the mountains and the idea that only hillbillies live in the mountains. But anyway, when I made that, I thought, well, you know, why not spell it kind of going along with the hillbilly theme? Not that we're hillbillies by any means. I guess the fact that we do live in the hills, you know, people might relate to us in that manner. But going along with that theme, I thought that I would spell it kind of funky, like you see sometimes an N written backwards or something to that nature. So I spelt it saw and then the word mill instead of it being one word. But anyway, that, like I said, was primarily just a temporary shelter for it. We didn't spend too much time on it, just to house it and keep it out of the weather while we were cutting and building up here. Guys, I hope that that was helpful, going over the sawmill and some little things that I have learned by watching YouTube. You know, like we always say, this is not a how-to channel, neither is our main channel. If you want to look up tutorials on mills and milling lumber, there are plenty of videos on YouTube to do that. That's what my recommendation would be. That's where I picked up some of the tips and things to mill the lumber up here. But that's kind of the story on my sawmill and how I use it and what works for me. I hope that there was something in there that might benefit you. I hope that this was entertaining in some way about the sawmill that I use on a regular basis up here to do what I'm doing. Anyway, guys, don't forget about our giveaways here on this new channel every month. Make sure and stay tuned for that. You'll find that at the beginning of the month. And I did get another comment the other day that they weren't able to make a comment. From my understanding, you have to have a Gmail account on YouTube. Once you have the Gmail account, you go in there, it will ask you to create a channel, which all of this is free. Just go ahead and create one, and then what you're able to do is go down there and access the public comments and just make a comment. But that's how you enter the giveaways on either channel. So, with that said, guys, I hope, like I said, that this was informative somewhat. Stay tuned for our giveaways on both channels. We appreciate all your support and all the comments and everything that you guys do for us here at both of our channels at the Outpost. So we hope you all have a great day. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you back up at the Outpost again next time.